All right, we're back on One True Podcast. Alongside me, as always, is my good friend John Werner. Johnny, how are we doing?
Bryce, good to have some couple dudes in here.
A couple dudes. I like it. Yes, we are joined this week. It's a Baylor bye week, incidentally, so we're not talking about Baylor football so much as I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk a little more Big 12 expansion, which our readers and a lot of people around the country have certainly been interested in. We're joined today by Jason Beatty of the Orlando Sentinel. Has been with the Sentinel a couple different stints. You had some internships there and now back covering UCF, but you also covered UCF for 24/7 Sports, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thanks for joining us. And then our good friend, previous podcast guest here, Joseph Duarte of the Houston Chronicle. Joseph, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me. I did get permission from Kirk Bowles and the Austin gang, so we're good. We're good to talk.
That's good.
I'm still on them about keeping me out of the Big 12. I finally got my due.
Yep, they leave, you join.
Works out perfect.
Yeah, well, it'll. I'm sure we'll be talking to Kirk and Sid next week, probably, but Baylor UT coming up next week. But let's dig into some Big 12, expansion talk. So Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, the AAC contingent of the new arrivals to the Big 12 are pegged to join the league no later than 2024-2025 school year. So my question to Jason and Joseph here, what do you feel like are the odds that those three are able to kind of wiggle out of the American before that?
I mean, I think it's right now just, legal talk that they're going to be joining in 2024, 2025, no later than that. I don't think it's going to happen next year, but I'd be pretty surprised if it doesn't even happen by 2023. I mean, this is just speculation on my part. I'd be pretty surprised if that doesn't happen. I mean, just to sit around and wait for 2025 to come around doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The three schools from the American had to give 27-month notice. And I think at the time of that notice, it was like right before the start of the 24 season. So, right before the start of the 23 season, my bad. I feel like realistically, something's going to change to make that happen before that. I'd be pretty surprised if we got all the way to that point, nothing happened.
Joseph, what do you think?
Houston's gone on the record and said that their plan is 2023. So, there's the negotiating part of it where, just for some context, UConn paid about $17 million to get out before the 27-month time period. So I imagine, at least from Houston's standpoint, and I would think all three would want to come in at the same time instead of staggering this. But you're probably going to end up paying that much, maybe that 15 to 17 million range, because now look at it with the American about to add 6 schools reportedly. There's going to be a lot of comings and goings. Maybe it tidy things up a little neater if you can get these 3 out by 2023 and start looking to the future with those other schools, maybe along that same time frame.
Yeah, I had seen those reports about the American, kind of looking to expand its roster again. Obviously, with the defections there. John, that feels like the next, fertile soil for the Big 12 to try to poach, right? Those schools that the Americans adding.
Well, we still haven't given up on Tulane and Memphis.
That's right.
Because
From
of
a
the food
perspective, yes, we're pretty greedy that way.
Yeah, we're leading the fight for that still.
No doubt.
I still can't believe that Memphis fans aren't picketing in downtown Waco right now to get in. I mean, you'll learn that that's one of the more rabid fan bases, especially when it comes to basketball, and it's if I'm Memphis right now and I'm looking at the schools that are being mentioned that are coming in, I'm like, what the hell did I do wrong to get this punishment or to get caught in this? But I mean, it's amazing, there's some deficiencies there, facilities and stuff, but anyway, it's just sort of we got to get them in the Big 12 just for that barbecue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bryce and I are fighting for them.
Yeah. Well,
I
Penny
did have some
Hardaway.
great New Orleans. We'll talk about it at the end. I did have some great New Orleans food last night.
Nice.
Rubbing it in, Joe.
Penny Hardaway's son plays at Duncanville, actually, which is in the Dallas area. So I'm surprised, he hasn't been knocking on the Big 12 office doors and, stumping for Memphis to get added. So with the addition of these schools, in addition to BYU, the conference now has schools spread across 3 different time zones. Obviously, it already had 2, with West Virginia being out there, in that Eastern time zone. But now, it's pretty geographically spread out. Do you guys see some inherent geographical challenges to this setup, or does that really even matter in today's college landscape?
I don't think it matters a whole lot. I mean, I think BYU to Orlando, whoever's going to lose that game, that's a long flight home.
Yeah.
But you look at UCF already goes to Houston and already has gone to SMU. They've gone to the Texas schools. They've made the long trip previously up to UConn and up to Temple as well. So, Orlando specifically, when I'm speaking about Orlando, they have a large airport with direct flights. I think more than enough direct flights compared to some of these other schools. So I don't think it's that big of an issue. I mean, from a football perspective, you're going to charter a whole plane and maybe a couple planes and fly them out to Texas and the rest of the Big 12. But, maybe I know there's no soccer, but maybe for like tennis or some of those other non-revenue sports, that might be a little challenging. But, from a football perspective, basketball perspective, I don't think it's that major of a deal. Otherwise, it wouldn't be happening because, it wouldn't make sense.
Right.
Guys, I agree. Geography doesn't matter anymore. I mean, I don't even think kids know what a map is these days. Texas women put out a tweet this week where it had Austin to KC, and it had KC where McAllen, Texas would be. So I don't know who put that tweet together, but they must have failed geography that or missed that week of class. But you look at the way things are set up. I mean, we've heard of Houston and the Pac-12, and can you imagine Houston to Pullman, or you look at the American, the way it's set up. Temple's way up there, sort of by themselves, and we talk about travel partners and East Carolina. The way that the American's going now, I'm surprised Marshall didn't get a look, simply to be closer to one of those northeast or eastern seaboard schools. But 3 time zones, 2 time zone. I think what these conferences want to do now is, if you're going to survive, you got to sort of expand your reach. The Big 12 gets into to the Florida market, which they've never been in. They've long wanted that. And then you look at them going out west. BYU's got such a huge national following that I think it's going to cover multiple, even more time zones, because you're gonna get that reach that they offer. So yeah, I mean Siri can't even tell me how to get from my doorstep to downtown Houston time. So I don't think anybody's going to care where the schools are located. It all works out. It'll be a little bit more expensive, and it'll be a little bit more tiring, where we hear that the student athletes will miss valuable class time, but they all seem to figure that out and work it out. Class can wait.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody's always trying to expand their footprint, and this is just a bigger foot here. So I say bring in Hawaii, just see what happens.
Let's see if the Trib can spring for that trip. John. You've gone to Hawaii on the Trib's dime before.
That was many moons ago.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I tend to agree with you guys. Not to be a contrarian, but I have been known to be a contrarian before. I do feel like where it really will be more of a challenge is in some of these other sports, non-revenue sports. And it'll be interesting to see maybe what they do with scheduling a little bit. Like just for instance, the Big 12 used to before COVID play volleyball matches on like Wednesdays and Saturdays, uh, and then COVID came along and they sort of tweaked the schedule, and now they're doing these back-to-backs where they play the same opponent in the same location, like Friday, Saturday, and it cuts down on travel. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see some tweaks like that, so that you're not going, not everybody may go to Orlando in volleyball, or whatever it might be. So we'll see how that all works out, but certainly there's going to be some challenges, but I think Jason said it well. If these challenges were that big a deal, they wouldn't have done this. I mean, they've looked at it.
Two little points to it, Bryce. One, I don't know. I'd be interested from the BYU perspective if we've learned anything about the setup and how that'll affect potential Sunday games for the the Olympic type sports, and also the American, like in baseball last year. They sent everybody down to Florida at the beginning to do sort of a round robin setup where they all went to, I believe it was Tampa or in that area, and they played a chunk of conference games, and then the series were 4-game series rather than 3. So they sort of eliminated midweek games around conference play. But there's ways around it where, like you said, you can double up. You can have that travel partner where if you're Houston, you go to Tulane and you play a Friday Sunday volleyball. So I'm sure all those setups or options are on the table.
Yeah, no doubt. So obviously there's very obvious reasons why these schools would want to join the Big 12. It looks like the Big 12 will still remain a quote unquote Power 5 conference. I've heard people, Bob Bowlesby has said that's more of a label than anything, but they certainly do have some voting rights and things that go into being a Power 5 conference. So for you guys, what are the biggest reasons that specifically Houston and UCF might want to join the Big 12?
I would say the biggest thing for UCF is the fan base. UCF has 300,000 living alumni, which is pretty remarkable. It's a lot of people who are alive and they're young. I think the average age of a UCF alum is like 35 or 40 or something. It's in that 35 to 40 range. I mean, you can look at some schools and their average alum is in the 60s, right? I mean, it's UCF being such a young school, having opened in in the past 80 years or 50 years or whatever it is. You have a large fan base, obviously, because UCF has the most number of students. I think it's the largest, maybe up there with Arizona State at 70,000 enrolled. And because of that, you now have a large alumni base, and that means generating, fundraising, attendance. You can get fans. You can play a game anywhere in the country, and you're going to have fans there. UCF travels well, and UCF lives everywhere. So I think that's the biggest thing outside of the obvious money, exposure, market. I mean, being in Orlando is obviously, I think it's the largest TV market without an NFL team. So that's right off the bat. But I would say generally specific to UCF, the size of UCF, 70,000 students enrolled. It's number 1 or number 2 in the country. And the fact that they have, over a quarter million living alum that, support the school and donate money.
You guys know where we're going with this with Houston, since Southwest Conference. I mean, to them, it's about belonging. They have felt like, they've gotten either the runaround, the shaft, been ignored, whatever you want to use to describe it. But it's sort of validation now that we're in a Power Five. Now it may not be Power Five that they thought, but it's going to be the Power Five. And but at the same time, I'd love to be in the athletic director's office in year 3 when they click on the bank account and you see the difference between that $7 million payout and whatever it's going to be, 25 million, 20 million, because we shouldn't discount the financial part of it, because all 3 of these American schools are going to see a huge windfall when it comes to the money there and sort of. But you look at what Cincinnati's doing in football. I mean, without without the Big 12 money as it is, they've gotten some renovations and some facility upgrades, and they've got the number 2 team in the country. So it can be done without that money. But can you imagine when they do have it, what they'll be able to do? So between exposure, money, and just that designation now that you can actually get into the playoff, I think those are all combinations that are high on Houston's list of why this move makes sense and is worth it.
Yeah, no doubt. John and I have talked about it. I mean, these 4 schools make a lot of sense to me for the Big 12. And obviously Houston was one that was up for consideration before. And, I know the Cougars were not, happy when they got snubbed the last time the Big 12 kind of went through all this. I think that money piece, Joseph, that you mentioned is the biggest reason that it made sense for the Big 12 to actually stick together, because there was talk at certain times when the conference was looking like it might crumble again, that the American might poach, some of these Big 12 schools. Well, the Big 12's TV deal is a lot bigger than the Americans' deal. And granted, some of that is based on Texas and Oklahoma being in the league, but nevertheless, it did make sense. I thought the Big 12 did a smart thing by sticking together and then, trying to go out and be aggressive for once, because a lot of times I would say, John, you said it, they kind of sat on their hands the last time of realignment, right?
Oh, I thought it was kind of embarrassing. All those schools, kind of presented their best face to the Big 12, showed why they should be in it. And then they didn't accept any of them. I thought that was a real embarrassment to the league. And I'm glad. I think they could have added 4 better schools than this.
Yeah, no doubt. Go ahead, Joseph.
No, Brian, I was also interested, and John would know this because he covered the Southwest Conference. Back in the day, we didn't talk about payouts and the TV deal. I'd be interested to know what kind of money schools were getting annually, back in those 80s and 90s, and just kind of see, how things have changed. Because, we're talking now the SEC is getting 60, 70 million plus per school. And you look at some of these other payouts, and I know times have changed and you've got all this new media and stuff, but it was a far simpler time when we didn't have to worry about all this, and it was simply just line up, and of course we'd have the occasional Southwest Conference scandal that we deal with, but we just kind of
pretty big too.
Yeah, lined up and played on Saturday afternoons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was more about rivalries back then.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, true that.
Hey, Bryce, I would add, thinking about it more, not just from a money exposure standpoint, but specifically for UCF in the state of Florida, they're in the same state as FSU, Miami, and Florida. It's always been considered the Big 3. And UCF, since the 2017 season, they've tried to form the Big 4 or call themselves part of the Big 4, I guess. And Miami has had its struggles. I mean, look at FSU right now, and this year right now specifically is a bad season for the state of Florida football. But from a recruiting standpoint, those 3 schools were always able to get and retain the best talent. But then you have your Clemsons, your Alabamas, your Georgias basically fly in, and your Ohio States fly in and pick the best pick the remaining best kids, or sometimes the best kids overall. I think UCF can now go to a recruit and say, hey, you don't have to go to a Nebraska or a Tennessee or Indiana or freeze your butt off in the Northeast to go play Power 5 football. Like, you don't have to go to Vanderbilt just to play Power 5 football. If FSU, Florida, and Miami don't want you, you can stay, in Orlando and live in the Sunshine State and play Power 5 football. And that's always, even I think Gus Malzahn in the first 8 months that he's been at UCF, and when the staff arrived, I told them, it's going to be a reality check. Kids, because of Gus Malzahn, want to see Gus and play for Gus. Then they come on campus, and this is before, the Big 12 invited them, but they would come on campus and not realize that UCF wasn't already in a Power 5. Because I feel like Group of 5, Power 5, for everyone involved, it means something. But for recruits, they get it, but it's not the main thing, I don't think. I think, playing time and the brand of the university may be a little bit bigger to a kid. But at the same time, they'll be like, wait, you're not, once they learn they're not Power 5, they're kind of taken away and don't even consider UCF anymore. So UCF and Gus Malzahn specifically can now tell, recruits and transfers as well, come here and play Power 5 football and live in Orlando and help build something.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a big recruiting boon for all those 4 programs that are joining. All right, so not to let people too much know about how the sausage is made, but I'm just going to tell y'all that my clock is ticking on my free version of Zoom. So I'm going to skip ahead.
I was worried. I didn't know if there was like something going to detonate.
No.
That time, and I was like, do I have to run or?
No, I'm going to skip ahead to a fun question that I wanted to leave y'all with. So give me about a minute on this, no more than that maybe, but so I had to laugh. I saw a tweet where somebody referred to Big 12 legend Oscar Robertson. And of course, we're talking about the Big O, who played his college basketball and played in the pros in Cincinnati when Cincinnati had an NBA team, the Cincinnati Royals. But so in all seriousness, obviously all 4 of these new Big 12 schools have a rich, athletic history in a lot of sports. And so this is always a kind of a fun thing to do. But if you were picking, Joseph, if you're picking a Houston Mount Rushmore, who are the 4 people on that? Jason, you do UCF, and John, I'll let you handle Baylor. So Joseph, I'll start with you.
Well, if we're not including coaches, or I might include coaches in my number one's got to be Carl Lewis.
Sure.
You can't go wrong there. Number 2 for me would be Olajuwon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hakeem, not
Hakeem, that dream, baby.
Third, I would probably still stick with basketball and go with Elvin Hayes.
Yeah.
And then, you can make a case, put Andre Ware on there as the Heisman winner. If I only went one basketball and included a coach, I'd probably go with Bill Yeoman.
Yeah.
The father of the inventor of the veer, or you could go Guy Lewis. So player wise, I think you're safe with that. Lewis, some combination of Lewis, Olajuwon, and Big E.
Yeah. Those are some pretty good ones.
And you're still leaving some guys off. You're leaving Drexler off.
Leroy Burrell.
Leroy Burrell. So,
yeah.
There's been a few, but yeah, those are the direction that I would go.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Jason, how about you? Top that.
I don't think I can. I'm gonna stick with 4 football players. I'll give you a coach. I know you asked for 4. I'm gonna give you 4 football players. I'm gonna give you a basketball and another coach, just for fun. Dante Culpepper. I think a lot of people maybe don't realize, the modern fans don't realize that he went to UCF and really put UCF on the map. Recency bias, maybe, I would say, but I think UCF fans would agree. Shaquem Griffin, his story and what he did to, really put UCF, and a teammate of his, Mackenzie Milton. I know he's at FSU right now, but he was one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football when he was healthy before he injured his leg. And then Baylor fans might not want to hear this next name, Blake Bortles, right? Blake Bortles. And for my coach, I would say George O'Leary, probably another name they don't want to hear. But those 4, Blake Bortles, Mackenzie Milton, Shaquem Griffin, and Dante Culpepper are my 4. And then if I had to pick a basketball player, Taco Fall, the big man.
Yeah.
I was about to say, you might have some restrictions on on the stone
Yeah.
used for taco, you may not be able to get him on there.
No, he's gonna have his own mountain.
That's great.
Mount Taco.
Taco Fall. That's one of the all-time best names for sure. And still in the NBA. So Johnny, who you got for Baylor?
Okay, I'm just going to go with players. I think get too controversial if you throw in coaches. Okay, RG3.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody argue with that. Michael Johnson,
Yep.
Olympian, gold medal winner. Brittany Griner,
Yep. You got to put
40-0
Brittany on there.
record.
You're
probably
3
the
for
most-
3. I agree with all these.
Okay, here's a new
Uh-oh.
addition. Jared Butler,
Ooh, now
first
see,
team All-American, MVP of the
National
NCAA
champion.
tournament, national champions.
Yeah.
I'm
So-
No Singletary.
I would have
No
put
That's
Singletary over
Singletary is
Jared
hard to
Butler.
leave out. Yeah.
Yeah. And if I'll give you the 4 Baylor coaches if there was a coaches Mount Rushmore. It would because we kind of did this once. We had a like an all-time Baylor athlete bracket that we let readers pick, and we named each of the regions after coaches. And so those 4 were Clyde Hart,
Mhm.
one of the great track coaches in history, Coach Michael Johnson, Coach Jeremy Warner, so it's got Olympic gold medals in addition to national champions. But Grant Taft, you got to go Grant Taft. I think you've got to go Kim Mulkey, and you got to go Scott Drew. I mean, that's 4 pretty good coaches.
Can't
there.
argue that, any of them.
Yeah, and so that was fun. Good
Yeah.
stuff. Well, guys, we're looking forward to seeing y'all here whenever that is, 2024, 23, whatever that is. We'll see you around at some of these games, but certainly we thank you for joining us and giving some of your expertise.
Texas Monthly came out with that barbecue list this past
Yeah,
weekend.
baby.
There's a few Houston places on there, so
There's a Waco spot on that list too.
I saw.
Yes, barbecue, good stuff. So, yeah, Jason, you got to give us what's the best place before we leave here to eat in Orlando. Doesn't have to be barbecue.
Yeah, no, I mean,
That sports writers can't afford.
And it can't have a Disney Mickey Mouse ears thing in front of the door or anything.
oh man, then I don't know. I mean, I was gonna say this little place called Disney World probably is your best bet if you want an all-around experience. There's some pretty good spots by UCF's campus, though. If you want some really good pizza, Lazy Moon is the place to go right off campus, I would say.
Okay,
Cool.
that sounds
All right.
good. Cool. We're down for pizza.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thanks again so much, and again, we'll see you down the road.
Thank you.
Anytime, guys.
Guys,
All right.
thanks.